Hello and welcome to part 3 of my tutorial in my minor series. Today we're going to be looking at two secondary chords, the 2 and the 6 chord. If you recall, in part 2 we looked at the primary chords. That was C minor, F minor, and G, of course using C minor as my example. The only extension I used was on the 5 chord, that of course being the 7th, which gives us the tritone, that strong push into the tonic. Didn't mention about the other two chords. Well, let's take a look at those just before we move on. The 4 chord, C minor, is F minor. The 7th is available. That activates the chord and pushes us towards another chord. One of the most likely choices would be the 5 chord. So we could have, say, something like 4, add the 7 to the 5, and to the 1. The 1 chord is generally left as a triad. Remember that a 7th activates the chord, destabilizes it in other words. The last thing you want is a destabilized 1 chord. So I don't think you'd appreciate arriving on the 1 chord in this fashion. Destabilized. I think you'd prefer something more like solid ground. That being said, on a 1 chord, a 7th could be added when you're moving away from it. In other words, I've established my 1 chord. Let's say I'm on my way to my 4 chord. There it is there. So, is not a problem at all. Let's get back to the chords we want to talk about, the 2 and the 6 chord. I'm going to look at the 2 chord first. As you know, it comes in 2 forms: regular, my diminished chord, and irregular, my minor chord. On my regular 2 chord, if I were going to add a 7th, it would be the C, making that a half diminished 7th. Some publishers might refer to that as a minor 7 flat 5, and the other 7th available is the diminished 7th itself. So both these 7ths are available, half diminished, diminished 7th. On the irregular chord, basically just the 7th is available. What about the 6? Well, I guess it's time to level with you. Like there's no Santa Claus, there really is not a minor 6 chord. Well, what is it then? Well, you'll always find out if you take what you think is the 6th note and put it in the bottom of the chord. In this case, it's the B half diminished 7th. Likewise, when I was talking to you about the 4 chord, I only mentioned the 7th. Didn't mention the 6 at all. If I add a 6, it's not really an F minor 6. If I take the D and put it at the bottom, we're right back to our regular 2 chord with a half diminished 7th on it. So sorry, no such thing as a minor 6 chord. Yes, I realize you'll find minor 6 symbols in your sheet music, but doesn't change the fact that they really do not exist. Let's take a look at our irregular 2 chord in C minor, which would be D minor. The irregular 2 chord does come in handy when you're using a melodic minor and coming in with the raised 6 and the raised 7 into the tonic. I certainly wouldn't be using a regular 2 chord against the raised 6th note of the scale. That's when the irregular 2 would come in handy. Let me give you a little example of that. A 1, 4, 1, irregular 2, 5, and 1. Let's look at the regular 2 chord. That's the one you're going to be using most of all. Like in major, it's used as a subdominant to a dominant to a tonic position, 2, 5, 1. What makes this chord unique in minor is that any inversion of the chord is used quite freely. For example, if I did everything in root position, so 1, 2, 5, 1, I'll put a little melody to that. So there is my 2 to the 5. I'm going to keep the melody the same, but instead of using root position, I use the first inversion. I'm going to put the F of the D diminished chord in the bass. Even the diminished fifth looks pretty good because it will fall just a half tone right onto the 5 chord, as in. The other thing that makes the 2 chord in minor unique over the 2 chord in major is that it has no problem going directly back to 1. If you recall in major, we didn't often find a 2 chord going back to 1 chord, mainly because that was a secondary chord movement and had a bit of a pullback in our music. We don't have that type of consideration in minor, our primary and secondary chord movements, mainly because of the structure of the minor harmony itself. So if I take my 2 chord with that diminished fifth, it has no problem falling onto the fifth of the 1 chord. So we don't have that pullback at all. A 2 chord is quite free to move to the 1 chord. A problem can arise from the voicing of a 2 going back to 1. It's more of a part rating consideration, but it's certainly worth looking at in what we're doing. For example, if I play my 2 chord with my half diminished 7th on top, I really shouldn't go back to the 1 chord this way, because the fact that I've got a hidden octave from a dissonant, the C being my dissonant, going to an octave, that in part rating you definitely avoid. Here, it's not a bad idea to avoid it as well. Likewise, if I wasn't using a 7 and doubling up on my root, I wouldn't want to return to the C chord because that would be a parallel octave. So both these examples would be repaired by just simply using a first inversion of 1. If you want to add the root after the fact, be my guest, not a problem at all. One approach that will solve that problem is what we call contrary motion. We've talked about that before, where the melody is coming down and the bass is coming up and vice versa. Melody going up, bass going down, that kind of idea. Maintains control of our music. Let me give you an example of that. I'm going to do a 1 to a 2 and back to the 1 chord, but I'll use contrary motion this time. Right there. There's my leading tone into the tonic, my bass falling. Contrary motion, leading tone up, the bass falling to the tonic. Notice the tritone? Yeah, it shows up in our 2 chord as well as on our 5 chord, and that also helps push the 2 chord back to our tonic chord. Now, should I be approaching the tonic from above and not using the music affecta, approaching from the bottom but coming straight down, I might be tempted in certain circumstances to end on the first inversion of the 1 chord. And we'll put a little melody to that. So on my 4 chord, 2, first inversion of 1. And again, if I like, I can add the bass after the fact. Enough on the 2 chord, let's take a look at the 6 chord. The 6 chord in minor comes in 2 forms: regular A flat major, irregular A diminished. If I were in F minor, we'd be talking about a D flat major to a D diminished. D minor, B flat major to B diminished. It's important that you work minors in all the different keys. The irregular form of the 2 chord, the A diminished, is rather limited. It's basically an approach to the irregular 7 chord. So instead of having a 6 chord going to the irregular 7, regular form, irregular to irregular 7. But the regular form is what we're going to talk about for the rest of the tutorial, because it is the most versatile chord in tonal harmony. It has amazing flexibility. Let me illustrate. As in major, 6 chords will either precede a 2 or a 4 chord. If a 6 goes to the 4 chord in minor, there's a little contrast between the two. But going from a 6 chord to a 2 chord, a lot more contrast, perhaps better across a bar line. But there's an apparent problem with a 6 going to the 2 chord both in root position. So here we have a root of the 6 chord going to the root of the 2 chord, an augmented 4th or diminished 5th. We know that as a tritone, either up or down. So those leaps are not great, other than in Billy Strayhorn's Lush Life, where he does that throughout the whole composition. Actually, I've done a tutorial on that. So how do we solve the problem? We just don't do root positions in both places. You either use an inversion on one of the chords or in both of the places. Let's see why this is bad in root position. There's my 6 chord going to my 2 chord. Doesn't matter which direction. Here it is corrected. I'm going to go up to my first inversion of the 6 chord. And it's just a step up to my 2 chord. Or I could be on the first inversion of my 6 and go to the first inversion of my 2 chord. Could be on the root position of 6 and go to the first inversion of 2. All those possibilities and more, just as long as you don't do root position to root position. In major, a 1 chord moving to a 6 chord would be considered a primary movement, forward movement. A 6 back to a 1 chord, however, secondary movement has that pullback. As I've already explained, that doesn't happen in minor. Here's my 6 chord. I can go directly back to my 1 chord simply by letting the root fall onto the 5th. So because of that, I could use that chord in many ways. One could be a deceptive cadence into the 1 chord. If I start on a 2 chord, my D diminished, to a 5, interrupted cadence onto the 6 chord, and allowing it to return back to the minor tonic chord. A 6 chord is also happy to fall onto the 5 chord. In that case, like the 2-5-1, we can have a subdominant function to a dominant into the tonic chord. As in 6, 5, into the 1 chord. I could either end it there, elaborate it, maybe take it to a 4 chord, and back to a 1, or take it to the 6 chord, and back to the 1. All those possibilities. So a quick review. A 6 chord can go to either a 4 or a 2 chord, more contrast with the 6 moving to the 2. It can go directly back to the 1 chord, and it can also fall onto the 5 chord as a subdominant to a dominant and back to the tonic function. I'm going to work all those possibilities into just a few bars and explain as I go along. But let me change key. I'm getting a little tired of C minor. How about D minor? And again, D minor, based on the melodic minor, as I'm ascending, I raise 6th tone, the 7th note of the scale, up to the tonic, and they revert back to their pure minor on the descent. Let's pick up a little tune here and I'll incorporate all the things that I've been talking about. I'm going to start on the 1 chord, D minor. Use a passing 7th, that destabilizes the 1 chord, but that's fine. I'm on my way down to the 6th chord. Back to my 1 chord. Passing 7th, 6. Going to allow the 6 to fall onto the 5, and as we know in the past, any 5 chord can be split between a suspension and a resolution. That's exactly what I'll do. 5, back to the 1 chord. Second inversion of 6, allows me to go by step down to the 2 chord, to the first inversion of 5, giving me the leading tone into the tonic, and elaboration with the 6th chord, and back to my final 1 chord. So join me for part 4 as we discuss the last 2 secondary chords in minor, that being the 3 and the 7 chord. Until then, have a great day.